Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Art 195, 3D modeling for animation. Today, we're going to continue with UV maps and talk about them a little bit, and then we're going to continue and move on with displacement maps. I have examples and demonstrations of both, and I have a video for a displacement map, show you how to create mountain terrains and things like that. But I will also be demonstrating that as well, but on a much simpler basis. Okay, so what you're looking at on the screen right now is a recent rendering that I did of my gallery, and I want you to focus on the people in it. They are 3D. They're not simply placed in there in Photoshop, but the question is, you should be asking is that how are the faces, how is the hair, how all the clothing, how is it mapped onto that figure? And that's what I want to cover today. There are easy answers, and to do it by hand is extremely difficult. So I'm going to show you how it's done and where to get models like this if you wish. And then we'll go ahead and we'll move on to displacement maps. So again, if you're interested in getting detailed, realistic looking people like this, or other objects as well, it's not just people, but sometimes it's more difficult to, to really accurately map images and onto objects, and you do need to use UV maps. So this is my example, and I'm going to move over here, and you can see that this mother and child are in Modeler, okay? And so this is in texture view, and you can see that it is a three-dimensional model. And if I'm looking at it here as a mesh, you can see that, what it looks like. It's a very tight mesh. If I were to zoom in here, you can see that it's really, really lots of polygons, tons and tons of polygons. Well, if you're wondering, did I model this? No, I did not. This is an off-the-shelf model that I got. And there are a number of places that you can go to for these. I use very often cgtrader.com, and they have models of all sorts of things. And sometimes you want to model something yourself, and sometimes, like these people, it's just easier to get a scanned images, and that's what they do. They use a 3D scanner to scan the model, and at the same time they're scanning it and they're capturing the 3D aspect of the model. It's also capturing the images as well and mapping it onto the surface. So if you want to know what this looks like, what this map looks like to map it on here, if I switch from top view to UV texture, okay, it looks like at the moment there's nothing here. So let's move this over like so. So as far as I know, the best way to get something like this is that you have to scan the object that you want to, convert into a 3D model. And then if I switch over here to, I want her image, this is what it looks like. This is what the map looks like. So it's quite complicated. To try to do this by hand is near impossible. Okay. So, but this is typically the direction that 3D modeling is going. A lot of it for models, or meaning, people that you want to insert into your environment for a variety of reasons. Number one, it provides scale, it adds interest in believability, makes something look even a little bit more real when you do that. Is that they're not being modeled by hand anymore like we watched in the videos, because those are still very useful for more animated cartoon-like characters. In fact, those have to be done, or they should be done by hand, not scanned. But there are scanners now that can actually scan models while they're moving and capture all of that environment. It's pretty interesting how it's all done. So that's the example, one of the examples that I wanted to show you. The other is how to do that yourself. If you wanted to switch from here to top view, and this is Terran head. This is in the models that I provided for all of you for classic content. This is kind of a generic looking head of male figure. And if you're wondering, well, how would I create a UV map of this person, just the head? This is what you would do. You would set it up, and notice that I've rotated his nose and top view to the right view. You don't have to do that, but I think the result will be much better when you're done. And then what you do is what we've done before. You click down at the bottom right-hand corner under T for texture. And what you want to do is you want to create a new surface texture. Now, I've already created a couple of these. Excuse me. And then what you do, once you've created that texture, we can come back up here and I can go from, excuse me, top view to UV. Okay, now I need to specify the texture that I want. I don't want that one. I want from the previous model, I want Terran heads. So let me see if I can find him. Where is it? Let me switch down here. And I'm going to go to Terran head. There we go. Here's Terran head right here. But I don't want to see the image. So I'm just going to say no image for this. So this is the final version of this. And you can see it's splayed out. This is like if the man has been skinned. You can see that part of his ear is over here. Here are his eyes and nose and mouth and everything. And here's the back of his head, front of his head. Now, again, which one would you use to do this? Now, if I go ahead and I select new, when I was doing this the other day, we had Atlas for figures, sometime for characters that you're going to use. If you have thought about this in advance, what you could do is that you could use an atlas for this. And down here, if you have segmented the model by surface, you could break it down in individual pieces, or you could segment it by parts. So that would be a legitimate way of doing a character model. But what we're doing here is just the head. So instead of atlas, I'm going to use, this is not planar, I'm going to use a cylindrical. The head is basically like a cylinder. And then what you do is make sure that the axis, make sure that it's oriented correctly. And so that it's wrapping it around the y-axis. And then I click OK, create. And this is the result that I get. Now what you have to do, and this is very awkward, you could map a face onto this, a photographic face, if you wanted to. You would have to do some stretching and manipulation to do that. But in order to get it mapped on accurately, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select like so. I'm going to turn off the numeric requester, and I'm going to zoom in so we can see all of the face. Now, the only part that I'm interested in is the part that's located inside this rectangular grid. So now what I would do is I would go over here, and I should have screen capture. Do I have it up here? I guess I don't. So let me scroll over here for a minute. I have to look under my applications. And most of you should have a screen capture. You could, just do the whole screen, but what I would rather do under applications is capture just the square portion of that. So I'm going to go down here and just say screen capture, if I can find this down here somewhere. Where is it? Safari. Come on. Screen flow, no. Well, you know, you're going to have to take my word for it. Should be here. Oh, I know where it is. It's probably in utilities. I hope it's in here. Let's see. Snaps, screenshot. There we go. I'll go ahead and I'll open that. I'll close this. See, I don't want that. That becomes a problem. So let me go ahead and get this. Because if I take the screenshot now, it's going to include this, and that's not what I want. But this enables me to go ahead and to resize. So let me cancel this. Let's move this out of the way so I can see this again. Let's bring this back. And let's do that again. Let's go to screenshot. There we go. And now I can resize this to fit the rectangle in here. Or just, you know, make sure that I capture all of it. And then I can, in Photoshop, I can go ahead and I can change all of this. Okay, because I only want the part that's inside the grid. So now I can go ahead and I can capture this. It saves it down here, and I can open this in Photoshop. Okay, here is the captured image. And then once it's in Photoshop, you use these markers, you know, this grid, to place the image, to paint, hand paint if you wish. And there's also, I believe Photoshop has tools now that enable you to work with this. And that's something that I wanted to explore myself, to accurately map onto more complex compound surfaces. Okay, so that's more on UV maps. So let me get out of that. So the next thing that I wanted to cover, unless there are any questions on UV maps, is that I wanted to talk about displacement maps. So oftentimes displacement maps are used for a variety of things. When you animate them, it could be a way of creating a muscle, you know, a flexed muscle and an arm or something like that. But I wanted to show you how to, if you wanted to make a rough terrain, if you wanted to make mountains and valleys and things like that, if you wanted to make kind of crumpled blankets and that sort of thing, how you would do that. So I'm just going to do a new object here, set it up, and let's see, I want this texture to, not UV texture, I want this to be top view. Whoops, no, I want top view. There we go, top view. And similar to what I had done before with the mapping the texture on the flag, well, I'm going to do something very similar to that. But when you're mapping textures on up to this point, it's mapping it on the UVs. It's not manipulating any points. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create the box from the top view, like so. All right, just a flat two-dimensional box. And I'm going to apply a surface to it. Okay. And hit Q, and we'll call it ground. There we go. And let's give it a color. Kind of a nice brownish color here. Okay. So there we have it. I can apply a bump map to that, but again, that only affects the UVs. I want to actually displace points. So in order to do that, because I only have 4 points, I need to increase the number of polys in here by subdivision. So I'm going to go to multiply. And I want to go to subdivide, just as I've done before. And we're going to use faceted. And notice how I'm adding that. So we'll just keep doing that a bunch of times. To get a nice fine mesh. Subdivide. Do it a couple more times. Maybe one more time should do it. And so that I don't get any non-planars, I'm going to triple it. So that would be Shift T. And now I'm going to save this in my folder. Okay. And then I need to send it over to layout in order to apply the map. Because what we're going to do to apply a displacement map is the only way that you can visually see that would be in layout, unfortunately. That's the way that works. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. And I want to save this on my desktop in our content for the fall 2021. And I'm going to save it not in images, but in objects. And I'll name it ground displacement. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to send this over to layout. So let's go ahead and switch, send object to layout. And there it is. Doesn't look like much at the moment. So we have textured solid. Let me go ahead and let's look at it. And yeah, we'll just leave it textured solid for the moment. Make sure that we're in camera view. And I'm going to move the camera up like so. And move it a little bit closer. Let's move it down just a tad. And maybe I should tilt the object just a little bit in a minute. We'll see. So if we were to look at this in UV and VPR, you can see that it's very bright at the moment. And just, we have the gradient background and that sort of thing. I'm going to leave textured shaded on here for a moment. So now what I want with the object selected, I want to make sure that the object itself is selected, and I need to look at the object properties in order to create a displacement map. So what I can do here, this is object replacement. We have a number of options available to us here. So what I don't want to replace the object, but what I want to do is I want let's turn off bones. Let's turn off, we'll leave subdivisions on. I want to add, let's go right here. I want to add a displacement map. So they've moved this around and reshape. I'm going to add the modifier here. And it should be under displacement. No. Okay, so let me pause my recording for a minute. Yeah, there's so many levels to all of this. It's difficult sometimes to remember where everything is. I know basically where it is, but until I do it and it's in my current memory, then I forget. So it was right here under, I turned off bones because we don't have any bones. We could add morph maps. There's a number of things. I want displacement map. So if I double click here, as soon as I add this, I want this to be displaced along the y-axis. Okay. And now what I need to do is I can use an image or I can use a procedural. I'm going to show you the procedural. And then when I'm done, I'm going to pause the recording and we're going to watch a video on using images for displacement. And it's pretty easy, and it's pretty astounding what you can do, the kinds of terrains and mountains and stuff that you can create. So instead of image, I'm going to switch to procedural. And you can see already by using turbulence, for example, notice how it's displacing all of those points in that polygon. And it looks very coarse and very rough at the moment. So let me go ahead and switch from current camera to perspective so we can get a better look at this and zoom in here. And if I want to smooth this out, I can just by, making sure that under my surface texture. So let's go back under the surface texture of this. Let's go under surface editor. And I can turn on smoothing. And now notice how it smooths everything out. So this would, if you zoomed way in on this, you could get, crumply blankets. You can also, one of the things that you can do is from here, instead of turbulence, maybe you want ripples and water. That would be another good one to do. So let's go ripples to, let's try that. And texture value, you have to start to play with these a little bit. So I don't want the ripples to be so pronounced. And then how many wave sources? Maybe let's just use 2 or even just 1. And there's a ripple right there going from the center outward. Now, when I switch back from layout to modeler, notice what happens. You don't see that displacement. So that kind of plays into what I talked about earlier in this semester, is that when you're adding more sophisticated surface textures and that sort of thing, or, that you can only do that, or the best way to do that is in layout. And the instance here of displacement maps, the only way that you can do it is in layout. So again, here's a good example of ripples. And actually these, if we were to add over here a null object, we could actually move the ripples and have them change and, over time. And that's pretty cool. So this is displacement maps. So now what I want to do to show you how you can have even more control over this using images is to show you a video on this. And I have made it available for all of you on modules. And it's also, I have in my YouTube channel, I have a playlist of light wave videos, and this is in there as well, the one that I'm going to show you. So let me go ahead and pause this video, and this will be it in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. So that was a nice little tutorial from YouTube showing us how to turn displacement maps into mountain ranges and valleys and craters and that sort of thing, but using image maps to do that you would create quite easily in Photoshop rather than use the procedurals that I did for this. That's pretty much it for today. In the future, I will be, because we have a bit more to cover in advanced features, but I will also be showing you more videos that I have saved and made available for you on modules, as well as in the playlist that I made for Lightwave on my YouTube channel, show you different ways of like fast scan and car paint. And, if you wanted to create leaves on trees and all sorts of things, there's all these various things that you can, that are very specific that you may want to look into. And I'm kind of in a shotgun manner, throwing them your way and letting you know that they are available, the videos that I've made available, as well as others, for you to peruse. And hopefully you'll be able to make use of some of them on your final project. Okay, add details, add realism, and that sort of thing. If you're interested in the, let's see, if you're interested in adding, let me add another here. I want CG Trader. You want to go to cgtrader.com. This is, you can find models of people. You can find models of all sorts of things. But, specifically, if you're looking for people, let me look for, people here, and you can find them. They range in price from just a few dollars to a few $100s. It really depends on how much money you want to spend. Some look great, some don't look so good. But as you can see, here's one for 38. Here's one over here. There's some others for 19. I purchased some for $10, 11, something like that. And again, I think they really can enhance your scene considerably. Again, they do a variety of things for you. They add to the realism of your scene, number one. Number two, they also help in gauging the scale of your model, because you know about how big a person is. So, they give you here all the maps. And as I said, all of these models, they weren't hand modeled, they were scanned. There's some pretty sophisticated techniques that they use now for scanning people, as well as other objects. There's, I know that, I don't know how many of you have ever gone to IKEA and stuff, but they're creating a vast collection of scanned models that it just sometimes doesn't pay you to make your own for detailed, but you want to create the environment. Or maybe you want to start with a character like this and then modify it yourself. So that's people. And another one under CG Trader, there's other sources as well. This is one that my go-to, but if I wanted to look at, let me think of a subject here. How about lamps? Because I didn't want to model the lamp. Here's a whole bunch of lamps, but they can get kind of pricey. If you look hard enough, some are pretty inexpensive. They're, just a few dollars. And again, they can add some nice details to your model that that otherwise would take quite a long time to build. It's also useful to use as an example for yourself when you are modeling, to have something that you can reference and build. Here's our first project was a lamp on a table. Well, here's a very detailed lamp with the shade, the light inside and everything, extremely detailed. Now, if you recall how long it took you to build that lamp and the table, understand that you were just learning the program. It's still, consider all of the elements that you could possibly have in a scene. It could take a lot of time if you're working by yourself, and it would, be helpful to have some of those just to be able to pull off the shelf. So, these are good resources, I think, for you. And that kind of gone off on rail a little bit, but it obviously harkens back to what I was talking about earlier with regard to UV maps, because a lot of these use objects, because they are scanned, use UV maps in order to accurately give you a detailed version of the model. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. And we're just going to, as I said, for the remainder of the semester, kind of use a shotgun technique for covering some of the other elements that I want to make sure that you have access to. As I said, like fast skin and car paint and different kinds of lighting techniques and things like that. And there's a lot of useful videos and that's what I hunt for all the time. If I don't know how to do something, I just go on and the internet, do a search, and if it works for me, fine. If it doesn't, then I discard it and move on. But there are many, many, many examples that I have saved for you and myself, and I continue to look and add to these. So that's pretty much it for today. I hope this has been helpful for you, and will be useful for you, especially for your final project. And if you continue to work with Lightwave or any 3D modeling program for that matter, to really get some detailed, realistic models in the future and be able to create some pretty realistic scenes. Like I said, this is, an example that what I've been working on. I wanted the focus to be on my artwork, but to give, a sense of, as I said, scale and realism and a sense of place and that sort of thing, I added these people. But the models themselves, all the artwork and everything I created myself. Oftentimes it's the other way around for people. Like I said, they're building the environment, and they're, for all these little detailed objects, they just pull it off the shelf from places like CG Trader. But this was my own artwork that I built using 3D programs and that sort of thing, and I wanted to showcase it. So that's the way I work, and I hope that this has been helpful for all of you. So I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to pause the recording, and I will see all of you on Monday. Okay, that's it. Bye-bye.